Good evening. I'm Gabe Gutierrez in for Tom. We begin tonight with President Biden's stark warning over Putin's nuclear threats. The president saying the risk of a nuclear crisis is the highest it's been since the Cuban Missile Crisis 6 decades ago. Biden referring to remarks by Putin a month ago when he said he would not hesitate to use nuclear weapons while calling up 300,000 Russian reservists to fight in Ukraine. And yesterday, Russia shelling the city around Ukraine's massive nuclear power plant, hours after the Kremlin said it was formally seizing it. Putin also facing new losses as Ukraine reclaims more territory in the east. And today, the global community once again showing its condemnation for Russia's invasion, with the Nobel Peace Prize awarded to human rights advocates in Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, who have become symbols of the resistance. So let's get right to Keir Simmons, who leads us off from Moscow.
President Putin ignoring celebrations, working on his 70th birthday today, as President Biden warns the Russian leader's rhetoric may mean a nuclear crisis not seen for 60 years. Saying we have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that Putin is not joking when he talks about the use of tactical nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons. Tonight, the White House is saying there was not any new intelligence that sparked those remarks, but Russians we spoke to today as fearful as anyone at the prospect.
Are you scared by the talk of the use of nuclear weapons now?
Well, everyone's scared, of course, but most of the population in Russia doesn't believe it.
I think it's not possible.
You don't believe it?
Yeah.
You don't think it will happen?
I hope.
Today, in an interview with the BBC,
it's dangerous even to speak about it.
President Zelensky said he agrees it could be an Armageddon and risk for the whole planet, adding Russia has already seized the nuclear power plant. This as President Putin's hopes of victory now challenged by Ukraine's advances in the east. And while experts here tell us Russia's nuclear doctrine limits the use of even low-grade nuclear weapons,
we may find in a situation when each side strives to win, but everyone would lose.
And Russia's isolation, evident from our journey into Moscow, 2 long-haul flights, 15 hours travel from Europe, and the tension palpable as soon as I arrived.
I just got stopped in immigration for an hour, questioned, they went through my phone.
Despite the billboards celebrating military heroes, many Russians are leaving the country to avoid the draft of 300,000 men, while increasing the pressure on President Putin, state TV urging him to stand up to NATO and even to fire his defense minister. Amid those open divisions among President Putin's allies, the Washington Post reported that a member of Putin's inner circle confronted him over Ukraine, citing several people familiar with the matter. President Biden was briefed on that intelligence, saying, "I'm trying to figure out what is Putin's off-ramp."
And Keir Simmons joins us now from Moscow. And Keir, what might President Putin's off-ramp be based on what you're hearing?
Well, you know, Gabe, there is no clear off-ramp. President Putin is now surrounded by hardliners. That being said, Russian partners like China and India would not want to see a nuclear escalation. And remember, Gabe, anything that President Putin does, he'll have to sell to the Russian people.
And Keir, Ukraine's President Zelensky also just announcing that his country took back more territory this week, right?
That's right, and that, again, is the challenge for President Putin, the way things are just changing on the ground in eastern Ukraine. Those calls that I mentioned for him to fire the defense minister, Shoigu, well, okay, he could do that. Maybe that might be some kind of an off-ramp for him, but it doesn't change the picture in Ukraine, and that fundamentally is why President Putin tonight finds himself in something of a corner. Okay?
Keir Simmons for us in Moscow. Keir, thank you. Turning now to the ongoing controversy in Uvalde, Texas. The school district there suspending its entire police force today. The move comes after outraged parents protested the recent hiring of an officer who was under investigation for her response at the Robb Elementary School shooting. That officer now fired, but parents are still demanding answers. Ayala Charles has the latest.
Tonight, the Uvalde School District taking the drastic step of suspending their entire police department. They didn't cite a specific reason, but it comes just days after parents were outraged at the district following the release of body camera video. The footage obtained exclusively by CNN from the day of the massacre shows then State Trooper Crimson Elizondo with fellow officers.
If my son had been in there, I would not have been outside, I promise you that.
Elizondo resigned a few months after the shooting and is one of at least 7 responding troopers currently under internal investigation over their actions, according to records from the Department of Public Safety. But she was later hired by the district as an officer, parents expressing their shock at the hiring. Kimberly Rubio lost her daughter Lexi.
Us families have been calling for the officers with UCISD to be suspended pending an investigation, and it's for this very reason. We don't know what their role was that day.
Elizondo has since been fired. She couldn't be reached for comment.
I feel numb hearing her say that she realizes that there's danger, but her child's not in there, so it doesn't matter. As a mom, I just can't even comprehend that statement. It's disgusting.
The district announcing it's placing acting chief of police Miguel Hernandez on leave. He was involved in Elizondo's hiring, according to a document obtained by our San Antonio affiliate. That document also notifying Hernandez of Elizondo's pending investigation for actions inconsistent with training as well as department requirements.
And so that school district had full information about the status of the person they chose to go ahead and hire.
The district saying it remains committed to resolving issues with verifiable evidence. Kimberly is still missing her daughter as she tries to push through the pain with calls for transparency.
These people they will always have failed me. So I don't know if I'll ever be satisfied, but I'm hopeful that no other families have to go through this. And that's all I can hope for.
Such an emotional journey for those parents. And Nyela Charles joins us now live. Nyela, how long will the district's police operations be suspended?
No word yet, Gabe, on how long the suspension will last, but the district says in the meantime, it's asking the state's Department of Public Safety to provide troopers to patrol the schools, while the district's police officers are assigned to other roles within the district. Gabe?
Nyela Charles joining us live. Nyela, thank you. Now to some breaking news here in New York. Mayor Eric Adams declaring a state of emergency over the thousands of migrants being sent to this city from Texas. With the number of people in shelters about to break the all-time record, the mayor is now planning to open up tent camps and even house migrants on cruise ships. Priscilla Thompson has the latest.
Tonight, the mayor of the largest city in the country saying the migrant crisis is pushing the city to the brink, declaring a state of emergency.
Our right to shelter laws, our social services, and our values are being exploited by others for political gain. New Yorkers are angry. I am angry, too.
Mayor Adams saying the city is burning through $1 billion this fiscal year on the problem, leaving no funding for other issues.
If these trends continue, we will be over 100,000 in the year to come. That's far more than the system was ever designed to handle. This is unsustainable. New York City is doing all we can, but we are reaching the outer limit of our ability to help.
The shelter system overwhelmed. More than 61,000 people now living in shelters, just shy of the all-time record from 2019.
We need help, and we need it now.
Adams now looking for ways to send migrants to other cities and said he's negotiating with cruise ship companies to house migrants on ships. But his primary plan is to build a tent camp on Randall's Island, just off the coast of Manhattan. Critics slamming these housing plans.
The city should be ensuring that rather than opening up, tents, which might be susceptible to extreme weather, or cruise ships, which we know throughout the pandemic have been hotbeds of COVID spread, they should really be focusing on things like hotels and purpose-built shelters in order to make sure that people are connected with safe accommodations.
The migrant crisis in New York City orchestrated by Texas Governor Greg Abbott. In a statement, Abbott's office telling NBC News, Mayor Adams is an absolute hypocrite, adding, instead of fear-mongering and complaining about a few thousand migrants in his sanctuary city, Mayor Adams should call on President Biden to do his job and secure the border, something the president continues failing to do. In Washington, D.C., some 50 migrants dropped off at the residence of Vice President Kamala Harris early Thursday morning, marking the 4th time since September that Texas has left asylum seekers at her doorstep.
Comer un viaje de 40 horas, claro, un viaje bastante largo, bastante fuerte, y bueno, lo que no fue inesperable fue aquí que nos dejaron a la deriva, sin saber para dónde ir.
They have been told to get on these buses and promised that an organization would receive them here, give them food, shelter, and a job.
These just the latest families caught in the middle of a political battle, pitting border Republican states against northern Democratic territories. A critical point coming last month, with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis chartering a flight full of migrants to the wealthy, heavily Democratic enclave of Martha's Vineyard. A political play from border states causing chaos up north.
And while this emergency declaration could speed up the creation of those shelters, officials here tell us it could be weeks until the tents on Randall's Island are up and running. And until then, busloads of migrants are continuing to arrive here. Gabe?
Priscilla Thompson, thank you. Now to a new development in the investigation into Donald Trump's handling of classified documents. Sources telling NBC News the Justice Department suspects the former president is still in possession of material he took from the White House, and that more classified documents could still be out there. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dateline has been following these developments closely. So, Ken, the DOJ is using the word suspect here. They're not saying they know for sure there are more documents. So what type of evidence are they basing this suspicion on?
Well, it's a secret investigation, Gabe, so we don't know the full answer to that question. But what we do know is that the FBI says they found 48 empty envelopes marked classified when they searched Mar-a-Lago, and the Justice Department has been hinting in court documents that they suspect there are missing records, and the National Archives has told Congress they don't believe the Trump administration turned over all the documents. Now, as to whether the DOJ has a witness or more hard information that the Trump team still has presidential records or even classified documents, we don't know. But the fact that they decided to escalate it and actually have the top counterintelligence official at the DOJ reach out to the Trump team and convey these suspicions, to me, seems significant. And we'll have to see where the DOJ goes from here.
Yeah, so still a lot of unknowns there. But, Ken, the New York Times is reporting that this news has the Trump legal team divided on just how to respond. So any official response from the former president and his team?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, in a statement, Trump spokesman told NBC News that, quote, the weaponized Department of Justice and the politicized FBI are spending millions and millions of American tax dollars to perpetuate witch hunt after witch hunt. And he added that President Trump is being unjustly, illegally, and unconstitutionally targeted. But you're right, there is a divide within the Trump legal team. According to the Times, one lawyer wanted to be more cooperative with the department, but the defiant camp seems to have won out at this point, Gabe.
So, Ken, where does this go from here? If there are more documents, is the Justice Department likely to take legal action to try and get them back?
Yes, if they believe, if they decide that, in fact, there are more presidential records or even classified documents out there, they will take steps up to and including getting a search warrant, Gabe, because it's not legal for a president to have government records. They belong in the National Archives, Gabe.
Ken Delaney, and live for us in Washington. Ken, thank you. And as the investigation into former President Trump's documents unfolds, President Biden could be dealing with an issue of his own. As we first told you last night, the Washington Post is reporting that federal agents have enough to charge the president's son, Hunter Biden, on tax crimes and making a false statement on a gun purchase. With less than 1 month to go until the midterms, what impact will this have for Democrats? And for more on that, we want to turn to NBC News senior politics reporter Jonathan Allen. And John, the DOJ and White House are not commenting on this story, of course, but investigations into former President Trump have been a big talking point for Democrats. How are Republicans responding to this story?
That's a great question, Gabe. First off, most of them are not responding to this story publicly at the moment, and I think in part that's because you've got the Biden Justice Department investigating Joe Biden's son, and there may be political advantage in staying away from whatever will come from that, at least for the short term. If the Justice Department ends up charging Hunter Biden, if he ends up having a trial, certainly we'll hear a lot from Republicans about that, but I think they don't want to get in the way of a political opponent who is imploding or appears to be imploding a sort of old rule of politics. Now, Republicans, a couple of them have responded publicly. Andy Biggs, the congressman from Arizona, big Trump supporter, said the walls are closing in on Hunter Biden on Twitter. But really, for the most part, it's been quiet on the Republican side. And Democrats, the ones I talked to about this say there's some concern there about the political effect, not necessarily for these midterms, but certainly for President Biden if his own son is actually charged at some point, or if he ends up being in a position of having to decide whether to pardon his own son or not.
And speaking of the midterms, John, do you think that this will ultimately throw a wrench into the midterms for Democrats?
I think it's unlikely to, Gabe, simply because even if there are charges brought before that point, before the midterm elections, and it seems unlikely that that would happen given recent history and the scrutiny on the Justice Department bringing charges against people in an election window, I do think that what you'll probably see is, a few people on the margins talking about this in the campaign, but it is much more likely to have an impact after the midterms than during these midterms, in part because there will not be, even if there are charges, that won't happen immediately, and the case won't play out immediately. So there won't be as much there. And in addition to that, you can expect things to ramp up after the midterms. If Republicans take the House, they are certainly planning on launching their own probes into Hunter Biden and whether or not anything he might have done illegally or improperly benefited his father.
Well, John, and if the Republicans do make out well in the midterms and launch these investigations, a lot of Republicans say that this case is not just about Hunter Biden. What they want, their allegations, what they're alleging, is that this could potentially mean that the Biden family, and President Biden himself, could have been involved in some corruption. Do you think any of those charges will actually stick?
It's a great question again, Gabe. It's hard to know without any of the evidence from an investigation that has not yet happened to prejudge that as to whether anything would stick to President Joe Biden. Obviously, a lot of charges were made, allegations, I should say, not actually charges, about Hunter Biden and his relationship with his father and whether his father benefited from his business dealings before the presidential election and voters decided to elect Joe Biden anyway. So, there is no reason to think at this point that anything that Hunter Biden did that he would be charged with by the Justice Department is actually related to President Joe Biden.
Jonathan Allen, thank you so much. Turning to the economy now. All eyes today on the monthly jobs report. The unemployment rate ticking down as just over 250,000 jobs were added. But the markets reacted by plummeting 630 points, roughly a 2% drop. Tom Costello now on the reasons behind the mixed messages.
The good news, the nation's unemployment rate ticked down in September, back to a 50-year low of 3.5%. The bad news, the unemployment rate ticked down to 3.5%.
Bad news, good news, good news, bad news. Maybe you don't want to see unemployment rates moving lower.
The Federal Reserve actually wants to see unemployment moving higher as a sign the economy is cooling. That would mean it could stop hiking interest rates to bring down 40-year high inflation. But today's jobs report suggests the Fed will likely have to keep raising rates through the end of the year, pushing rates higher for new loans, credit cards, and probably mortgages, too. Still, President Biden today focused on the positive.
This recovery has been the fastest increase of people re-entering the workforce of any modern economic recovery.
The rate of job growth does seem to be slowing. 263,000 new jobs added in September, half the rate from July. Already, big employers are ordering hiring freezes or fewer seasonal hires, including Meta, Facebook, Amazon, Walmart, and FedEx. In New York, small business owner Chioma Ngudo and her sister employ 30 workers making African headscarves. With inflation and supply chain issues, she's just hoping to keep her current employees.
We decided to raise our prices just so that we could maintain the staff that we currently have.
But big steel manufacturer Nucor is expanding and hiring 5,000 more workers. Average pay, $140,000.
For every one direct job we add, there's 4 to 5 indirects that come into those communities and towns.
But a lot still depends on the Fed.
The fear is that the Federal Reserve misses the cooling of the economy and raises rates too fast and pushes the economy into a recession.
And Tom Costello joins us now from Washington. Tom, walk us through the timeline for the next interest rate decision and what the Fed will be looking at.
Yeah, so next week we get critical inflation data for September. And after today's report, they're going to look at that very closely. And then the Fed makes its decision on whether and how much to raise interest rates on November 2nd. That's just a week before the midterm. So you can understand why the timing there might be really interesting. In addition, most experts now think that we're looking at another 1 to 1.5% in total rate hikes by the end of the year. Gabe.
Wow, Tom. Of those people who are still unemployed, though, what's the racial breakdown?
So again, the total number, 3.5% unemployment, just incredibly low, right? The lowest since 1969. Among whites in this country, it's at 3.1%. African Americans, 5.8%. Hispanics, 3.8%. Listen, for every ethnic group, that's very low, but we always do see that people of color generally are the first to be let go and then the last to be hired when we're in rough economic times.
Tom Costello, thank you. Still ahead tonight, new details on the killing of that kidnapped California family. What we're learning about their relationship with the alleged abductor and a second arrest now in the case. Plus, a deadly Ebola outbreak growing in Uganda. How it will impact airports here at home. And the explosion during a high school homecoming event in Florida. Wow, look at that video. What happened and how the school is responding now. Stay with us. Tonight, 5 U.S. airports are now screening passengers who have been in Uganda over the last 3 weeks. The death toll in that country is growing due to an Ebola virus outbreak. What's known as the Sudan strain has killed at least 30 people. Uganda is now preparing to host a regional meeting with the CDC, the WHO, and countries affected by the 2014 Ebola outbreak. For more on this, I want to bring in Dr. Tom Frieden, former director of the CDC and an infectious disease expert. Dr. Frieden, thanks so much for joining Top Story. You were head of the CDC during that Ebola outbreak in 2014 and prominently involved in both the U.S. and the global response. As you look at what's happening now in Uganda, what concerns you the most, and does this echo what occurred back then in any way?
Well, one echo is that this strain of Ebola, the Sudan strain, we don't have a proven vaccine that's readily available. We don't have treatment with antibodies that may be effective against the other strains. But what's different is that this is Uganda. Uganda dealt with Ebola many times before. During the 2014-2016 Ebola epidemic in West Africa, this was new to those communities. What's positive so far, or not yet so concerning, is that it hasn't hit urban areas. When it hit urban areas, it became very hard to control because it was hard to identify all of the contacts. Uganda, Gabe, had been the country in the world that I would have said is most likely to control Ebola. They have a strong public health system. They have a history of doing it well. What's been really shocking over the past few weeks is to see that this country that was so well prepared has taken so many hits from COVID that they're really struggling. Right. They have healthcare workers who are burnt out, communities that are not willing to listen to public health advice. They have a trust barrier where the communities used to trust the government for public health advice. Now they're suspicious, similar to what we saw in West Africa. Now, Ebola is not COVID. It's not the flu. It's hard to catch. Though it's deadly, you have to generally be in quite close contact with someone, such as caring for them in the hospital, washing the body of someone who's died from it, or being at home with someone who has Ebola. So if you haven't been in Uganda in the past few weeks, if you haven't been in contact closely with someone who's been in Uganda, like caring for them in your home, there is zero risk to you. But this is a reminder that we're all connected, and a risk anywhere is potentially a risk everywhere.
And Dr. Frieden, you mentioned that this has not hit urban areas yet, but the current Ebola outbreak there appears to be devastatingly deadly. It has a 69% fatality rate, as we said, and 30 deaths, 43 confirmed cases so far. So what is the biggest concern about how quickly this virus can spread to those more urban areas and potentially then to other countries?
There's a really well understood way of stopping Ebola. You identify cases promptly, you identify contacts promptly, you quarantine the contacts, isolate the cases, and if you trace all of those chains of transmission, you can end the Ebola outbreak, as every single Ebola outbreak has been ended since it was first discovered decades ago. But that requires engaging with communities, that requires making sure that you have a really prompt response. What we found in West Africa was if you got out there within a couple of days, you could stop the spread. If it was a week or two, it might spread much more widely. And that's one of the reasons that there's a global movement to move to what's called 717, that every single outbreak of any disease will be found within 7 days, reported within 1, and all essential control measures in place within 7 days. And in fact, countries around the world are doing that with outbreak after outbreak. But until we do it with all outbreaks, we'll all potentially be at risk.
Dr. Frieden, thank you. Now the top stories news feed, and we begin with new details in the killing of a kidnapped family in California. Officials say the suspect, 48-year-old Jesus Salgado, was a former employee of the family business who previously had a dispute with them. Salgado's brother has also been arrested and is facing several charges, including accessory. The family of 4 was found dead on Wednesday after being abducted from their trucking company at gunpoint. An investigation underway now after an explosion at a high school homecoming event in Florida. Several videos posted on social media captured the blast. It took place just seconds after a sheriff's deputy lit what was supposed to be a bonfire. Luckily, no one was hurt and the fire was quickly put out. The school has decided to end the 50-year tradition. And a consumer alert now. A massive cheese recall is expanding over listeria concerns. Michigan-based company Old Europe Cheese is now adding its baked brie cheese to the recall. So far, more than 25 brands of cheese have been impacted. The products were sold at major retailers such as Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and have sell-by dates from September 28th to December 14th. So far, at least 5 people have been hospitalized across 6 states. Tonight in Las Vegas, the man accused of going on a stabbing spree on the famed Strip was in court after investigators say he killed 2 and wounded 6 more in a bloody attack. It all unfolded near the Wynn Casino, where locals and tourists were forced to suddenly run for their lives. Miguel Almaguer has details.
After becoming a chaotic and bloody crime scene, tonight one of the nation's most iconic boulevards is returning to normal, not far from the Vegas Strip, where 2 were stabbed to death and 6 more were nearly killed by a knife-wielding suspect, the man accused of carrying out Thursday's rampage, who investigators say is seen here running from the crime scene, faced a judge today. Yanni Barrios, a foreign national who was wearing protective gloves in court, was booked on 2 counts of murder and 6 counts of attempted murder. Not entering a plea, a police report says he told detectives he was angry because he thought people were making fun of him on the Strip and hoped officers would shoot him. Authorities say he used a large kitchen knife to stab victims in front of the Wynn Casino.
Initial stabbing occurs on the sidewalk area. It appears unprovoked. There is no altercation beforehand.
After first responders triage victims, both of the deceased have now been identified. Some of those attacked appeared to be performers, showgirls in costumes.
Honestly, I'm very shaken up. It's scary because it could happen to anybody.
The attack was so violent, some of the victims arrived at the hospital in critical condition, clinging to life. With the Vegas Strip one of the most popular tourist attractions in the country, tonight investigators say the famed boulevard is safe, even after the violent attack in broad daylight. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
And if it's Friday night, you know it's Dateline. Tonight, Nevada attorney Susan Winters found dead in her home. The tragedy ruled a suicide, but the woman's family casting doubt on that cause of death and relentlessly pursuing justice. Dateline correspondent Josh Mankiewicz has more on the family's quest to uncover the truth.
It was a tragic loss, one that might have united a family in grief. Instead, it tore them apart in anger.
It was just very cold and hostile.
The lines were drawn and he wasn't backing off.
An open and shut case became a puzzle with a lot of missing pieces.
There's a lot of trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
There's a lot of clues in this story, but no easy answers. It seems like it just doesn't add up.
A family pushed back against the criminal justice system.
You knew that was going to be the most uphill of uphill battles.
Yes.
All we want to know is the truth.
And they refused to give up.
You're both grieving parents, and you need to let it go. How many times do you hear that, and from how many people?
We heard it from everybody that we talked to.
But we're stubborn people.
And Josh Mankiewicz joins us now. Josh, thanks so much for joining us here on Top Story. And this isn't your typical Dateline, right? Why not?
Well, usually Dateline's a whodunit. In this case, the question is, was a crime even committed? Susan Winters died. This went down as a suicide. The police department signed off. The medical examiner signed off. Everybody signed off except her family. They dug in. They were convinced she would never take her own life. And it took a long time and a lot of their money to prove otherwise.
And Josh, it's been 7 years since Susan's death. How's her family doing at this point? Do they feel any justice has been served here?
I think this is one of those cases in which no one's really happy with the outcome. That family got split down the middle by this. They're still split down the middle by this. Those two halves are still not talking to each other. Grandchildren are separated from their grandparents. And I think nobody's ultimately happy with the final result in court. But we are where we are.
Josh Mankiewicz, thank you. And you can catch that all-new episode of Dateline tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Back now with Top Story's Global Watch, and flooding hitting the capital of Indonesia, leaving at least 3 children dead. Officials say floodwaters toppled the wall of a school in Jakarta, crushing those students to death. The incident, part of the latest wave of flooding to hit the region in recent days. Experts say climate change is intensifying the flooding there. And then Chile, wildfires damaging the iconic Easter Island statues. The island's mayor saying heat from the fires cracked the stone figures after wildfires ripped through nearly 250 acres. Chile's federal government now being blamed for not doing enough to protect the UNESCO World Heritage Site from disaster. And now to the Americas. And tonight, we're in Puerto Rico, where residents are still reeling from the impacts of Hurricane Fiona. Most of the island's power grid is back online, but Puerto Rico's recovery is just beginning. And now, one of its most famous advocates is once again answering the call for help. In Puerto Rico, resiliency has almost become cliche.
So much of Puerto Rico has been lifting itself up, and our job is to have their backs.
Actor and playwright Lin-Manuel Miranda is once again advocating for the island, much like he did following Hurricane Maria, when he brought his iconic Hamilton here. Now, he's part of a coalition trying to revive the coffee industry by distributing millions of climate-resistant seedlings to farmers.
I want to give back to the island that has given me so much.
While Category 1 Fiona did not ravage Puerto Rico quite like Category 4 Maria, the U.S. territory with 3.5 million American citizens still finds itself fighting for attention on many fronts.
There have been earthquakes, there have been failures, man-made and natural. And the best way I can help is with artists and arts organizations on the island.
Miranda's Flamboyant Arts Fund has also partnered with Google Arts and Culture to digitize hundreds of artworks. Among those artists, Maria de Mater O'Neill.
What does resiliency mean to you?
Es un insulto, es un insulto.
Why? ¿Por qué?
Because what am I supposed to do? Be resilient, been fighting all my life?
For her, recovery is not about resiliency, but empowerment.
Do you see yourself in this reflection?
Claro, aquí, that's me. I have changed. The ever-changing future.
On an ever-changing island, power can come in many forms, from electricity to art to agriculture.
I just feel really proud to be a part of this recovery.
And with each passing storm, resiliency takes on new meaning. For Tom Llamas, I'm Gabe Gutierrez in New York. Thanks for watching. More News Now is on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.